All right, so let's just say I write a song. If I write it, I own it, right? Okay, now let's just say I take that song and I actually now record that song myself on my laptop using Logic or Ableton or whatever, right? And now the manipulation of that sound essentially is another copyright. It's called a sound recording copyright. So when you finally hold that vinyl recording in your hand, you might have one record, but what you have is two copyrights. You have the copyright in the song, and you have the copyright in the recording of the song, okay? Now, who are the authors and owners? What are the possibilities? Well, as I just said, if you are a DIY artist and you write your own song, you're gonna own the song. If you record your own song, you're gonna actually own the master of that song, all right? Now, let's just say, for example, you're a DIY artist, you write the song, and now you have a producer that's involved in helping you create that sound recording. Now you and the producer are going to own the copyright of that song. And let's just say now you are a major label artist, and let's just say, for example, you write a song and you own all your rights, and now you actually record a record. The record company is usually under a work-made-for-hire agreement going to make you sign away the rights and the master, and now the major label is going to own the copyright. Okay? Now, we've talked a lot about copyright law, and essentially the same principles apply to your masters, but there are some differences. And let me talk about some of those differences. Copyright law, like when pertaining to your music, can date back all the way to 1909, and it's a long time ago, okay? When it comes to masters, we're really talking about 1972 when it became sort of federal protection, and sound recordings were sort of, protected federally, okay? So it's not sort of as old of a law, it's rather new. The second thing is that when you register your copyrights in Washington, D.C., there's two separate distinct registrations. The song, as Michael said, is going to be on Form PA, and it's going to be indicated with the circle C, and the master can be registered on Form SR, and is going to be this P with the circle in it, okay? So those are two sort of separate registration processes. However, as Michael said, if you actually write the song and you actually own the master, you can just register on Form SR, okay? Now there's some other differences as well, especially when we're talking about some of the exclusions with the CD-PDs.
Yes, your CD-PD. I want a t-shirt with CD-PD. Well, the biggest one in the US that you should be familiar with is that masters in the US do not enjoy a performance right when it comes to traditional terrestrial radio. The radio that we all used to have, us old people who had AM, FM in our radios, in our cars when we turn on the radio. Songwriters and publishers have enjoyed the benefit of that stream of income from radio for years. But, all those years, master owners and recording artists did not get any performance royalties, and they still don't. So it's a really big thing to be aware of in the United States. But as we've moved into the digital world, in 1995, there was the Digital Performance Right in Sound Recordings Act, and then followed up 3 years later with the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Master recordings were granted a performance right in digital transmissions online, like internet radio and non-interactive streaming. And it was back at that time that Sound Exchange was formed, and we'll kind of address Sound Exchange a little bit more in a later segment. But that organization handles all of these performance royalties for these non-interactive and internet streams. And SiriusXM and Pandora are the two main sources of income. And I believe Sound Exchange just announced, I think they have distributed $1 billion since its formation. It's an incredible source of money, and you as recording artists or master owners need to make sure that you're registered there. But it's really become an incredible source of income.
The other day I got an email from Sound Exchange, and they said, hey, we've wired you some money, right? And I looked at my bank account and was like, hey,
man,
not a whole lot, but
money. I'll take it.
$900 from a song I wrote 20 years ago. I'm not complaining, No. So that's pretty cool. So, all right, moving on. Something else that I said we weren't going to really talk about, but we're now going to talk about, or at least address,
a little bit.
just a little bit, right, is foreign foreign copyright. And essentially now, a lot of you guys might be thinking, you might be going, so wait a minute, so cool, I'm actually, protected here in the United States, I've registered, all that good stuff. But what happens in a foreign territory? Can somebody in Germany just use my song, And the answer to the question is the Berne Convention. So we talked about this a little bit before. The Berne Convention is an international treaty that the United States entered into, I believe, in 1989. And essentially what that says is it says the United States recognizes the laws of foreign countries, and foreign countries recognize our laws. So let's just say, for example, I write a song here in the United States and I publish it in the United States. The country of origin is United States, and copyright law in the United States applies. If somebody in Germany actually wants to, just thinks they can get away with using my song, they can't. They have to acknowledge and respect the laws of the United States, and vice versa. So that's essentially how that works. Now you might be asking, okay, so this is really good news because I was stressing out about this stuff. So who is part of this Berne Convention? And I can just say who is not.
That's a shorter list.
Yeah, and that's easier. And North Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq.
Iran, I think those are the main four.
Yeah, okay. All right, so now let's talk a little bit more about some of the major differences between the United States and foreign copyright. And you can actually have a class on foreign copyright. So we're just touching the surface here. But some of the main differences are the term. The United States term of copyright is actually, a longer term than some other countries. So as part of the Berne Convention, everyone kind of tried to get on the same page, so to speak, and everyone has life plus 50 for the most part. Japan has life for 50, India has life plus 60, and the United States has life plus 70. And I'm aware there's people like Mexico that have a little bit longer, but essentially we have life plus 70. At one point it was life for 50. But thanks to our good friend, Sonny Bono, and Sonny Bono was actually the former husband of Cher, right, the recording artist. Actually, he lobbied to get the copyright term extended for an extra 20 years. So now we have life plus 70. Yep. So, hats off to Sonny Bono for doing that for us, right? Now, there's other differences between the United States copyright law and foreign law that you're going to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, what I think is an interesting, juxtaposition is that just looking at North America, I mean, Bobby mentioned India and Japan, but, just to the north of us in Canada, it is still life plus 50. And there's a movement now that Canada is trying to, review their copyright law, and they're pushing heavily for life plus 70 because we, right below them, are life plus 70. But then, as Bobby just alluded to, right below us in Mexico is life plus 100. And that is the longest term of any country in the world right now, is the life plus 100. The majority of the rest of them are life plus 70. But what is also a difference, if we move over to Europe for a second, that is a set of rights that we don't have here, is that the European area is generally very creator and author focused and friendly. And they have a concept called moral rights, or as the French like to call it, the droit moral. And it allows that even an author who may not own their publishing, they've given it away in some transfer, they still have control and kind of veto control and yes and no over how their credit is listed, and ultimately the context in which something is used. If they feel, again, political, religious, or whatever, that a context use of their song is against something that they believe, they actually have the right to say no, and the owner of that work actually has to listen to them and adhere to that. Here in the US, we do not have moral rights. So it's really a big distinction, and it kind of works against us sometimes. There's some reciprocal issues many times between us and other countries where some benefits that we might be able to get, we can't enjoy because we're not recognizing those rights here. One, also too, if I can jump back to sound recordings real quick, we talked about how the US doesn't have a terrestrial performance right in masters, but actually most countries outside of the US do have a performance right for terrestrial radio. There are also, this whole area of rights is you'll hear the term neighboring rights has kind of become a sexier term in the last couple of years. But especially again in Europe where these sorts of things are really prevalent, there's even rights in masters in broadcasts. So when TV shows use master recordings, much like we as songwriters and publishers get a performance royalty, the master owners and recording artists and producers also get a performance royalty overseas in those broadcasts. So it's really, we don't have that here, but it really can be a significant source of income that I think everyone really needs to be paying attention more.
Right, exactly. And just to be clear, you had mentioned that the majority of countries have life plus 70, but did you mean life plus 50, or did you mean?
Yeah, it can be a patchwork for sure. No,
Yeah.
I think you're right. Most of the majority that have not, like us, upped it
Right.
are at the life plus 50.
Life plus 50, yeah, right.
But still throughout Europe, actually, most of Europe is life plus 70.
Okay.
So it varies. It's a patchwork, which
Okay.
is why I wanted to use the North America
Cool.
sort of
Just wanted
comparison.
to clarify that.
Yeah.
All right, now, so our question to kind of end this segment. All right, so I have a lot of students at Musicians Institute and at the UCLA Extension, that come from other countries to study here. And one of the questions they ask a lot of times is, hey, I just wrote a song, should I or can I register it with the Copyright Office here in Washington, D.C.? Planning on moving back, to Sweden and, and kind of have a career there, but can I register it here? So what do you think? Think about it, do a little research about it, where is it best? And are you sort of protected everywhere, essentially, no matter sort of where you register it, right? So think about that. That's your homework, all right? I hope you guys like this. We're breaking down the basics for you so that it sticks. We've got a lot more to talk about, so hope you guys are enjoying it. We'll be back.
Right back.